Punks for Progress. This is the What the Fuck Report for March, April 2022. And I am your host, M. Progress. In this episode, we have a fantastic report from Kylie the Krankenschwester, where she asks the question, now that hospitals are under attack by anti-vax terrorists and fash, what should the procedure be as a member of the medical staff? We also had a brand new episode of the Father Fury Show, where he lets us know what he feels about the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. And of course, we have a brand new So-Cal Shannon scene report. We are introducing the first installment in our new series, Reading Revolution, where we read from a fantastic piece of work called Black Against Empire, the history and politics of the Black Panther Party. And of course, like with every What the Fuck report, we have a brand new video from the Guillotine Truck. So with no further whatever, here it is, the What the Fuck report.
And I'd like to dedicate this one to Punks for Progress. Punks for Progress.
This is 405 rounds of Punks for Progress. Yeah! Punks for Progress, death or anarchy. Fight for your liberty. We don't want your government. We don't need your services. I'm an anarchist. I'm an anarchist.
Punks for Progress on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks, brother.
That sounds right up my alley.
It's always a good day when you hear a punk say the word righteous.
If only the people of the world could come together for Yemen, for Palestine, for Somalia, infinity. If we could have fucking stood up for the people of Congo like everyone is for the people of Ukraine. Nationalism isn't something I've ever felt or understood. I don't take pride in something I'm not a willing participant of. I'm an American according to the colonial capitalists that divided this world to the point it won't work no more. But I'm just a human, living on a planet that no other species recognize borders. Humans roam too. Sure, there were territories, boundaries, but no bombing the innocent into submission, into oblivion, no destroying one's own home, the world we all live on. Things are made to be confusing by the ruling classes, so we don't become pains in their asses. They know we have the power. We make their money for them while they destroy everybody's home. Now is the time for the people to take back their labor, and destroy the ones who dispose of us daily. Rise up and fight back. Hey fam, it's So-Cal Shannon with the scene report for April. Starting April 4th through April 9th, the AIDS Memorial Quilt will be on display at Middle Tennessee State University from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the second floor in the Student Union Building. Go to aidsmemorial.com for more information. Thursday, April 7th, No Edge Records presents MDC, Millions of Dead Cops at Old Town Pub in Pasadena. With Boss Fight, False Confession, and The Fiends. Starts at 7 p.m., $12 to get in, 21 and over. April 9th, Rise Up for Abortion Rights has national actions. The Los Angeles event is on the corner of Hollywood and Highland, starts at 2 p.m. Check out riseupfораbortionrights.org to find an event in your area or to organize your own event. I would like to add how important it is that we rise up for abortion rights, because if we don't, who will? What kind of future will be left for women, for our children? We have to rise up like we did in the past to make abortion legal, safe, and accessible. This is what Rise Up for Abortion Rights is fighting for. So go check them out, fam. And finally, Wednesday, April 13th, California LGBTQ Health and Human Services Network and Mental Health Services Oversight and Accountability Commission bring you Out for Mental Health, Safer Spaces. The conference begins at 9 and ends at 3 p.m. at the Woodlands in Visalia, California. For more information, contact The Source LGBTQ Center. That's it for now, fam. And remember, fascism rises when we ignore the political climate that gives rise to it.
Hi everyone, it's Kylie the Krankenschwester with Punks for Progress, contributing another segment to the What the Fuck Report. Again, I'm talking about the politicization of healthcare. And for this segment, I am going to be talking about someone I never thought would make the headline news in my healthcare news feed, and that is Ammon Bundy. We're gonna look at what he's up to in Idaho and why he got a hospital shut down for 2 hours due to safety concerns, due to a protest he called for, and how I think that's really concerning at this point.
Good evening and welcome to the Saturday News at 5. I'm Katya Stepovic. A candidate for Idaho governor is facing a misdemeanor trespassing charge. Ammon Bundy was arrested just after 1 a.m. today. That's according to Ada County jail records. Now, those records show he was also released today. Bundy's campaign posted a statement on Twitter saying he was arrested in front of St. Luke's Meridian Medical Center, quote, for the crime of disagreeing with the hospital and CPS. According to the statement, Bundy was at the hospital in support of a family who claims their baby was medically kidnapped. You can see in this video here other people gathered there today to show their support for the family as well. Bundy also went back to St. Luke's after he was released. The Meridian Police Department says they are responding by saying Idaho Health and Welfare got a referral about a 10-month-old baby who was admitted to the hospital on March 1st. Now, during that visit, medical personnel determined the baby was severely malnourished. Meridian police say the parents avoided several follow-up attempts for them to check on the baby's welfare. So police took the baby into custody and brought it to St. Luke's and Meridian. Police say that's when Bundy and several other people showed up and refused to leave the property. In addition to Bundy, 3 other people were arrested, but they've all since been released as well.
So the hospital and healthcare facilities have become a popular place to protest, especially with COVID. And even I've seen this. I've walked out of a 12-hour shift during COVID and been met with 50 protesters yelling and screaming at me. about how I'm forcing them to wear a mask and taking away their freedom of choice, I guess you could say. However, this last week, a protest at a hospital turned so unsafe that the emergency room closed to any new patients coming in for almost 2 hours because, again, of safety concerns of these people that were standing outside the hospital. And again, I think this crosses a line. And the reason I say that is I've worked in many hospitals. I've worked in many hospitals who have been understaffed. I've worked in emergency rooms that have been lined with patients on the floor, and never has the hospital closed its doors. As nurses, we've called for them to go on diversion and to divert the patients away from the hospital, go to other facilities, tell the ambulances to take them to other facilities, and the administration has never shut down the emergency room. It's possible, they make dramas about it, a code black, a diversion, things like that, but this rarely happens. So the fact that this did happen, and it was because of the safety concern around these protesters that were around the hospital at the time, is a big deal. And these protesters were there for political reasons. I mean, at the root of it, political reasons. And I can't say I've been trained for that. In the hospital, as healthcare workers, we're trained for a lot of different scenarios. We're trained for external disasters, internal disasters. We're trained for chemical spills, and we communicate these through the intercom system. Over the intercom, you'll hear code and then a color. If you've watched any medical show or been to the hospital, you heard this. Code blue means at that location someone is not breathing or their heart is not beating, and we need to intervene immediately. So you'll see all staff running and converging on that location. Another common one is a code gray. A code gray is called when there's a combative or assaultive patient and the safety of the staff is at risk. So we need someone trained in restraints to respond to the situation to protect us. Another one that's common in many facilities is a code pink. Code pink is an infant abduction, when an infant cannot be located on the maternity ward, and there's a possibility of a kidnapping. As a nurse, I've been trained for what to do in that situation at different facilities. They do it differently, but for example, I stand at the nearest emergency exit, and I don't let anyone in, I don't let anyone out. I check name bands, and I check purses and handbags. Like, I'm trained for that. Another one, a more recent, a code silver. When there's an active shooter on the premises at the hospital. I've been trained for that, what to do in that situation, and how to protect my patients, and how to protect myself and my coworkers, and what are my options in that situation. So again, nurses and doctors in healthcare facilities, healthcare workers are trained for lots of different emergencies, and based on a code system. I mean, even on my badge for the facility I'm working at now, they have all detailed, all their different colors to call a different code. So what code would be called for a political protest where my safety is at stake? And have I been trained appropriately to respond to that? And I don't think I have. I don't think the US healthcare system has, or workers or administrators have embraced how political healthcare has become. Obviously, it's been a political topic based on funding and abortion, Medicare, Medicaid, things like that. But on a daily basis as a nurse, I could be followed home and be assaulted or verbally attacked for my career choice, which I didn't think was that controversial. I'm a nurse, I want to help people. But here we are in this day and age, because of this anti-science movement that's going on. So let's briefly talk about Ammon Bundy and how he got this hospital shut down for a couple hours due to safety concerns. So Ammon Bundy is alive and well. He's in Idaho. He's actually running for governor of Idaho. He's active on YouTube and Twitter, has quite a following with his far-right group and obviously with his campaign. And the situation that happened this past week in Idaho, one of his campaign workers, who I believe is a predominant preacher and far-right activist and has its own little website, media outlet. His 10-month-old grandson is at the center of this story. So this 10-month-old grandson of a campaign worker for Ammon Bundy, and that's why Ammon Bundy gets involved and makes this call to all his followers to show up at this hospital and attack. The short story is this 10-month-old was admitted to the hospital about a month ago with severe malnutrition. I'm sure at the time a Child Protective Services was involved, as is any case with a child presenting to the hospital like that. At the time, the baby was nourished back to health and was released back to the parents, I'm sure with the consent of the protective agency. 2 weeks later, the baby had a follow-up appointment and the baby had lost a significant amount of weight again. So the pediatrician was concerned. The pediatrician at that point made a follow-up appointment a few days later for the parents to come back, and the parents did not show up to that appointment with the baby. So the pediatrician, concerned as a mandated reporter, another controversial thing we do as medical professions, we're mandated reporters. We recognize and report any suspicions of abuse to the proper agencies. So that's what this pediatrician did, and the police got involved. They tracked down the parents, they tracked down the child, and took the child to the hospital, away from the parents into the custody of the hospital until further investigation. And as far as I know at this point, the child is in foster care. Anyway, while the child was being treated at the hospital, Ammon Bundy made this call on Twitter and YouTube for his followers to go intervene in the healthcare system. And this feeds in perfectly with the narrative that family values are being destroyed by progressive science. Most of their posters read that this was medical kidnapping, that the babies should be with their mother, and things like that. Of course, I don't disagree. Babies should be with their mothers. But if the baby's been malnourished for a month, something needs to be investigated. And so that's what the healthcare system is doing at this point, and then the Child Protective Services is doing at this point. No injuries were reported yet at what happened at the hospital, or if anyone infiltrated the facility. There was lots of chit chat about trying to go into underground tunnels to get into the hospital. And I can imagine, as a healthcare worker, the hospital being surrounded by far-right, I'm sure gun-carrying activists, angry at what you do for a job, is really scary. Again, what have I been trained for that situation, and is my employer going to protect me in that situation? And what code would we call at that point? You know, I think we should call it code flag, because usually people anti-science are carrying a certain flag around, and we can recognize that that's what's going on and respond appropriately. But I don't know how to respond. You know, I didn't know my job was controversial. So I think it's a very new realm for healthcare workers to be in a controversial field. But here we are, and we've got to prepare for what's coming.
One, two, three, four.
So hey everybody, it's welcome to the Father Fury Show. Yes, I want to let you know that Stephanie is doing much better, and you know, she should be back on here with me soon. And you know, she's tough as nails, and she is rocking it, and you know, she keeps getting better and improving health-wise. And so, you know, I appreciate all the prayers, the positive vibes, and good thoughts that have come our way. So thank you for that. But I wanted to talk about something with this episode. I was asked about my thoughts on the invasion of the Ukraine by Russia. So here are my thoughts. Punk musician with a PhD in theology and religious studies, and a minor in poli-sci, you know, for whatever the fuck that's worth. My thoughts are this. A mirror has been held up to our collective faces, and we have literally recoiled in horror and anger. But we're so fucking blinded by our imperialist, nationalistic cult that we don't even recognize our own reflection. We're watching Putin and his forces do to Ukraine what we did to Iraq in 2003. The only thing missing is Putin landing on an aircraft carrier under a banner that triumphantly declares mission accomplished. The justifications are the exact same. They're hurting their own people. They have weapons that could harm us. We told them to cease provocations against us, but they've persisted, so now we have no choice but to respond, and, you know, they will celebrate us as liberators. You know, looking back on the Iraq War, did we punish our leaders that lied us into it? No, we re-elected the fucker, and we now celebrate him for his shitty paintings and his friendship with another president's wife. I mean, hell, Britain knighted their leader that went along with our farce. Not only this, but, you know, we still have the audacity to give him and his cabinet a platform to declare, and a complete lack of self-awareness, by the way, that Russia's actions against Ukraine are illegal. You know, make no mistake about this. I want to be clear. I echo the Ukrainian soldiers' sentiments on Snake Island when they told the Russian warship to go fuck yourself. That's, but I do not simply reserve that sentiment for Russia alone. No, this sentiment is one that I impart to every imperialist nation and every authority that seeks to oppress. If we're incapable, I mean, the bottom line is this, you know, if we're incapable of holding our own leaders accountable for their actions, how the hell do we expect to hold the leaders of other nations accountable? You know, and as a sidebar, I also want to take a moment to comment on the way that we in the West have collectively fallen in love with Zelensky and his willingness to stay and fight with his fellow countrymen and women instead of hiding somewhere in a bunker. Now, I'm not making an assessment on Zelensky or his character. You know, we can discuss that another time. What I'm commenting on is how low the bar is that we have set for competent leaders that sees themselves as not only above their people, but not above their people, but also one with them. You know, as a leader, staying and fighting for your people and among your people instead of hiding like a coward in a bunker, that should be the baseline of leadership, not the pinnacle. You know, if we see this act as the exception to the rule, then perhaps we need to change the rules or do away with the current rules and those that make them altogether. So if you want to know where I stand with the oppressed. I think that that's the place for any person with a conscience. Stand with the oppressed. And I do applaud everyone's outpouring of sympathy and outrage over what's happening to the Ukrainian people, and, you know, the citizenry of the Russian citizenry that, you know, they're being kind of forced into this whole situation, you know, by a handful of leaders that make decisions for an entire nation, whether they agree with it or not. Sound familiar? So while I do applaud everyone for having that outpouring in sympathy for the Ukrainian people and what's happening over there, I do also pray that you can extend that sympathy and that outrage to other parts of the world where this same thing is literally happening. Stand with the people of Palestine. Stand with the people of Yemen. Stand with the people of Gambia and Somalia. Stand with the people of Rojava. Stand with the people of Lebanon. Stand with the people of Haiti and Panama. Stand with the native peoples of the Americas and of Africa and the indigenous tribes all across this world where we have colonized. You know, all power to all people, not just the ones that are convenient to support or the ones whose ethnicity is closer to our own or the ones who look like us. Support the oppressed. This is Father Fury. Have a good week.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey fam, In this edition of Reading Revolution, we are going to be reading from a fantastic piece of work called Black Against Empire, The History and Politics of the Black Panther Party by Joshua Bloom and Waldo E. Martin Jr., winner of the American Book Award. We will be reading from Chapter 6, pages 156 through page 158. And I just want to give you a little bit of quick context before I read these passages in terms of the time frame in the Panther history where this passage sits. So this is right at the very beginning of the Panthers sort of spreading out beyond the Oakland chapter and the LA chapter. At this point in the book, I think there's maybe 5 or 6 new chapters. So it hasn't fully taken off yet, but it's just starting to. And also incredibly significant about this time frame is that this is prior to the FBI, J. Edgar Hoover, and the COINTELPRO operation taking notice of the Black Panthers. At the point this is written, J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI have yet to even mention them in any of their paperwork. And this is significant because, as you're going to see in this passage, which I'll just give a little bit of the story away. The Panthers are attacked by 150 police officers inside the courthouse while they're being charged and facing charges in the courthouse. It's just monumentally brutal, the way that the police force goes after the Panthers. And this is even long before any of the COINTELPRO actions had been leveled against the Panthers. So, and as we know by history, it was just incalculably brutal and sort of unparalleled in history, the way with which the COINTEL op went after the Panthers. But even prior to that, as this passage will illustrate so clearly, they were met with such intense, violent state brutality from the very start to the very finish of the Black Panthers. And this passage, I think, these few pages from Chapter 6 of Black Against Empire, The History and Politics of the Black Panther Party, so clearly illustrate the level of violence that they were subjected to by the state. Okay, with no further whatever, this is pages 156 through page 158 from Chapter 6 of Black Against Empire, The History and Politics of the Black Panther Party by Joshua Bloom and Waldo E. Martin Jr. Several weeks later, on August 21, as public attention faded, a group of young blacks that included several Brooklyn Panthers ignited a pile of trash heaped in the street on Northstrand Avenue near the Panther office. When firemen and police responded to the rubbish fire, rebels attacked them with bottles, bricks, cans, and stones, and then began smashing storefront windows and looting stores along a 12-block commercial stretch of Northstrand Avenue. Police quickly quashed the rebellion and arrested 7 participants: George Carrera, Daryl Baines, John Martinez, Morris Holman, Ricky Fletcher, Patricia Riley, and Fremont Dunn. Some 100 police officers packed into the Brooklyn Criminal Court for a hearing on the rebels' case later that day, and the district attorney asked the court to set an extra high bail. Quote, "We have reason to believe that these defendants are members of the ultra-militant Black Panther Party. We feel there is a danger that they may not reappear in court unless high bail is set. Their actions show clearly a lack of respect for authority." Unquote. The judge proceeded to set an unusually high bail of $50,000 each for 22-year-old Correa and 17-year-old Baines, and $11,500 for 17-year-old Martinez, each charged with resisting arrest and possessing stolen property. More standard bail of $1,500 each was set for the remaining 4 defendants. Rather than stifle protest, the punitive bails ignited further resistance. While street rebellions were common among urban black youth in the late 1960s, these rebels were different, claiming common cause with the anti-imperialist struggles in Vietnam and the domestic draft resistance. In addition to 20 Panthers who rallied for the rebels and turned out for further court hearings the following week, the white left saw the Panthers as allies in their own anti-imperialist struggle and responded to the police repression with resistance. William Kunstler, a renowned left-wing lawyer, took the Brooklyn Panthers case and argued that the bail was unconstitutionally excessive, part of the police vendetta against the Black Panthers in New York. Members of the predominantly white Peace and Freedom Party and also the Columbia Strike Committee organized demonstrations outside the courthouse protesting the unusually high bail. The protesters carried signs saying, "Hands off Black Panthers," "White radicals defend Black Panthers," and "Stop cop harassment of the Black Panther Party." The court reduced bail up to $20,000 for Correa, $10,000 for Baines, and $2,500 for Martinez. At a September 4 preliminary hearing for Correa, Baines, and Martinez, 150 whites, many of them off-duty policemen associated with LEG, packed the courtroom. The cops positioned themselves behind the Panthers in the courtroom, poking them in the back with their nightsticks, cursing and saying, "White tigers eat Black Panthers." When the small group of Panthers left the courtroom and made their way to the elevator, the police beat them up and attacked a few white members of the Columbia University's Students for a Democratic Society who had come to support the Panthers. The New York Times reported about 150 white men, many of whom were off-duty and out-of-uniform policemen, attacked a small number of Black Panther Party members and white sympathizers yesterday on the 6th floor of the Brooklyn Criminal Court. Many of the off-duty police wore, quote, "Wallace for President" buttons, referring to George Wallace, the white supremacist former governor of Alabama, who was running for president of the United States. The off-duty policemen beat the Panthers and their white supporters with blackjacks. LEG officers called the Panthers N-words with hard R and motherfuckers while beating them. Uniformed police pretended to try to stop the beating, but actually dropped their billy clubs so the off-duty officers could use them to beat the Panthers. According to the Times, 2 of the Panthers had blood gushing from their heads after the beating. New York Panther Chairman David Brothers, the Peace and Freedom Party nominee for the 12th Congressional District at the time, was kicked and stomped in the back more than 20 times. Panthers section leader Tom McCreary suffered a fractured skull. Katara, one of the Panthers in the delegation that day, recalled fleeing from the off-duty police who were beating them with nowhere to turn. The Panthers finally got into an elevator and tried to go down, but the elevator went up. Everywhere they went, the off-duty police were waiting for them. They exited the elevator. The Juden Ford called the mayor's office but could not get through. They went to the offices of the Human Rights Commission and City Council, but found no one there. They fled into another courtroom and asked the judge there for help. He finally called a court guard to escort the Panthers downstairs. When they went outside, the police were waiting for them, and the Panthers split up and ran. The police chased them. Katara made it into the subway and took off his beret and black shirt so that the off-duty police would not recognize him and was able to ride home safely. The next day, Mayor John Lindsay and Police Commissioner Leary verified that off-duty policemen had participated in the attack, and they promised swift action. Quote, "including criminal prosecution if that is warranted by the facts," unquote. The day after the courtroom beating, a group of Panthers and their attorneys, Kunstler and Gerald Lefcourt, met with representatives of Mayor Lindsay's office and answered questions about the attack. In the following days, the Panthers and their allies turned up the political and legal pressure. On September 7, the New York State NAACP called upon the district attorney to conduct a grand jury investigation into the beating. 2 weeks later, acting district attorney Elliot Golden ordered a thorough grand jury investigation into the September 4 attack on Black Panthers in the Brooklyn Criminal Court. On September 10, the Black Panther Party filed a suit in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, charging the New York City Police Department with systemic, quote, violence, intimidation, and humiliation, unquote, asking for community control of the police and seeking injunctions forbidding the police from harassing Black Panthers. The National Lawyers Guild, the National Emergency Civil Liberties Committee, and the Law Center for Constitutional Rights all sponsored the suit. The Panthers' web of support was widening.
Investigative author Maury Terry believes that the call was a deliberate diversion.
The phone call immediately linked in the murders of Faraday and Jensen and led the police to believe that it was a psychopath at work, and it stopped the search for a real motive.
Fear paralyzed Vallejo. There were whispers that Dee's murder was linked to drugs and possibly to a satanic cult.
What is the process?
A step in the dark?
Over the past 2 days, Berkowitz has told Inside Edition that he did not act alone, that others were involved in the murders of 6 young people.
And then they became like the boogeyman. They became like Freddy Krueger or something.
Yeah, there was all kinds of stories, lots of conspiracy theories.
This is not a Halloween fable. This is a real-life horror story.
It's my estimate that there's approximately 40,000 practicing Satanists in America.
There are over 12 million teenagers and younger children who are now involved in the occult.
I was a child during what sociologists now refer to as the Satanic Panic.
Today, we are compelled to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help us God.
Senator Kennedy has been shot. Is that possible? No! Is that possible?
Oh my God. It was said that this cult was also responsible for the Son of Sam murders.
You know, I was told that, we're all brothers and sisters now. If you betray this group, you have to understand we're going to get your family. We're going to get them, because Satan won't tolerate anyone being a turncoat.
Joining us now is Maury Terry. Maury, one former New York City cop says Berkowitz is lying flat out. How do you respond to that?
I think it's in his own self-interest to say that. They have something to hide, something to protect.
Dressed in an Aleister Crowley-type ritual costume, Occult, as well as several others, were active in the Bay Area at the time of the Zodiac.
There's a strong Aleister Crowley influence in this case.
In addition to Zodiac's costume and the Crowley phrases in his letters, we have discovered a remarkable similarity between Zodiac's symbol and Crowley's rose cross symbol, which is intended to make one invisible to his enemies, and sometimes also called for blood sacrifices.